Hi friends, it's Heidi M. I am back. This time I'm going to revisit a film that I highlighted or spotlighted a few months ago called The Light Before the Sun, which is directed by Michael Greyeyes and it stars Jamie Thomas King alongside Rick Roberts. So the film, I'm just going to give you a bit of a synopsis or reminder of what it's about. It sort of revolves around character named Daniel, played by Jamie Thomas King, who's struggling to find his footing after coming off an international book tour. He's a celebrated self-help guru, and he returns home to an empty house. His wife and kids are away, and doesn't have any support systems in place, and tries to do everything he can to keep himself from calling the one person who could relieve his anxieties, or so he thinks. So Daniel gives in to his desperate need for reassurance, and he calls Freddie, or he connects with his friend named Freddie, who's played by Rick Roberts in a really excellent role. Daniel, in a way, sort of falls into a way of self-doubt, and we see glimpses of his a bit fragile mental health, and it's an interesting look at male vulnerability, but also mental health, as I mentioned, substance use, and celebrity culture. So this is a film that is sort of a self-discovery journey, and Daniel has to decide if he's willing to lose everything and kind of finally step into what is his most authentic self. Whether his friend Rick helps him along the way or not, that's up to you to decide, so that you have to see the film, The Light Before the Sun. But I'm setting this up because I will be speaking with team members of the film, and I want you to stay tuned for our discussion, which is up next. Hi friends, we have a full house today. I am joined by the team behind The Light Before the Sun. Nice to see you all, even if virtually. I'm going to go around and I'm going to give you a chance to introduce yourselves and also maybe give us a snippet of what your role is in the film. So let's start with Tamara.
Hi, Tamara Podemski here. Moved into writing, and then opened a production company with Jamie. I guess it's now like 2 years, and this has for sure been the wildest, most fulfilling part of my career. I guess yeah, it was a huge jumping head first. But I think yeah, treaded water for a bit. But now I'm like, I don't know, what is that? Now I'm doing synchronized swimming. Now I'm just on the high. We're on the end of a year long film festival circuit, and yeah, now I guess I'm just synchronized swimming and enjoying the flow of this wild ride.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So we'll segue to Jamie then. I know you and I connected a while back about this very same film, but Jamie, a little bit about yourself, and if you want to talk about the production company as well, if you like.
Well, I guess as Tamara mentioned, most fundamentally, I'm Tamara Podemski's husband, and yeah, we were as I mentioned the last time we met, we were gifted this seed money to go off and make a film, and so we came up with this story with the amazing Rob Baker, who we've known for a long time, and it evolved, and we brought in all of our other favorite collaborators, and the next of which was Michael, and then Guy Godfrey, and I played Daniel Wolf. It's really a two-hander.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the amazing Rick Roberts. And yeah, as Tamara said, it's been an absolute dream of a ride since we started. And playing it in film festivals and doing talkbacks and hearing how this dream that we all sort of shared, how it lands with people. And yeah, just so excited for the journey, really.
For sure. Thank you for being here. And Michael Greyeyes, we know you from your dance and film work, but now this is your directorial work.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Michael Greyeyes. I'm Nehiao. from Treaty 6 territory in Saskatchewan, and I am the director of the film.
So maybe I'll stay with you, Michael, because Jamie and I talked about the film before, but maybe you also maybe had some dialogues around the behind the scenes of wanting to tell this story, and I'm interested about what you saw in the script, and whether it's something that that resonated with you in some ways or reminded you of people you knew, and what those conversations were like especially with Jamie and Rick.
Yes, I was brought to this project by Tamara and Jamie. Now, interestingly, I've known Tamara for many years, from Dance Me Outside days, and I knew Jamie, through Tamara. And interestingly, Jamie and I worked together a little bit, because sometimes when Jamie's prepping an audition, you need another actor, and I feel like I have really good instincts about auditions, and so worked together on a couple of auditions. And based on that, Jamie and Tamara said, who might be an interesting choice for us to bring in as a director is Michael. And Jamie's, we had a really great working relationship as an actor and as a sort of a audition director. And that was the seed of this. So I owe it all to those two bringing me on board.
That's so great to hear. So now it's becoming full, like the full picture is coming into the screen for me. So Tamara, did you always know that maybe Michael was someone that you'd have as in mind for a director? What was that discussion? Because you are in the producing side of things, so I want to hear that side.
Yeah. My favorite part of kind of having the full perspective of the whole production was to imagine the best team to bring together and having the luxury and authority to make those decisions. But I know how Jamie works and I know how he needs to be supported. It is not an easy story to tell. So it wasn't a very long list. I don't even know if Michael said no, who else there would who else we would have gone to, because I was looking for something very specific. My job was to make sure Jamie was supported in that environment of storytelling. And whether you want to use the word trauma-informed storytelling, whether you want to use, like, especially with masculinity being dealt with in this way, we needed men. And Rick was specifically chosen, and then the part was written for him when we got to the script writing place, that these were men who were able to go to unsafe places in safe ways with each other. And even though there was a bunch of women behind the camera, what they were creating together needed to have a language and a intuitive way of exploring and playing. And I think also there was a freedom of physicality. Everything's quite contained in a very small, oppressive, whether it's the stage that Daniel Wolf speaks in or this house that looks expansive and beautiful and is this, what we'd all say like a dream home, but it's actually, he's confined by this house. So someone who is so in their body, and for people who know Michael's whole journey as a dancer and choreographer, and I have worked with him as both he was my director and choreographer. I think that is an element that I always love to have on the screen, and to be guided with someone with that knowledge and experience. Like, yeah, Michael was it. I don't know if there'd be a film if Michael did say no.
No, I mean, just to follow up on that, I mean, there was never a list. There was, as far as I remember it, there was a brief conversation, and as soon as Michael's name was thrown into the hat, there wasn't.
We didn't yeah, we didn't go any
Because
further.
I think, to Tamara's point, we knew we needed to feel very safe on the set. We knew we needed an actor, a director who understood actors and who understood the process and understood how take the most courageous risks when you feel the safest. And we knew going into this deep dive of these two guys who go on this hell of a journey in that night together. You know, we knew that we needed to feel safe and supported. And I guess when you think of toxic masculinity, the opposite person you think of, you know, is Michael. Michael is the person that I would like any toxic male to sit down and talk about what it is actually to be a man, you know, because, and I think it's funny not to be too cavalier about it, because it's a very serious point. I mean, he's an artist of the highest caliber, but he leads with such humanity as a person, and I knew that at the helm would take us to extraordinary places. And then when we threw Guy Godfrey into the mix, and saw how they were able to collaborate together and create a visual language, it was, yeah, it was so obvious that we made the only choice.
That's so nice to hear, because in seeing the film more than once now, that energy of community is so evident in different parts of the film, if it makes sense. From the casting that you have, from the folks that you have been discussing behind the scenes. And so it kind of makes sense that you're sharing this with me today. So maybe, Michael, I'll bring it back to you about your discussions with Guy Godfrey around the look of the film and creating those safe spaces that Tamara and Jamie are talking about. What was that like?
Well, I'm terribly honored by Tamara and Jamie's comments. You know, I really do believe, you know, that as Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people, that we exist in a quite violent industry, because in a way it's an extractive industry. They extract our experiences and our pain and our joy. And so, you know, we're very experienced. You know, we've been in this for decades. And when it came time to tell a story as particular as this, I think Tamara knew, you know, as a leader, and Jamie knew as a leader of the production. It's like, because of what we've experienced in terms of violence, this is going to be different. And potential from the beginning. And Tamara knows me as a director. You know, we worked in theater together as well as film. And so I think that was an essential part of it. It's like, how do we're making something and we know it's going to be good, but the making of it is as important as the thing. And I think that's actually a specifically Indigenous idea, is that it's not way of doing and product. Way of doing and product are one idea. And therefore, if we do something in a good way, it will be good. And when we, you know, use other systems, then guess what? The violence in those systems will work their way into the product. And, you know, tremendous respect to our producers. They were like, we know subject matter needs delicate hands. And, you know, I'm glad that both actors felt, you know, they were like, I'm safe, I can do anything. We're doing the craziest things here on camera, but I'm supported. And that's my job. And Guy also is a man who listened. For my friend Tail Feathers, who worked on project in Manitoba, made a comment and said, you know, like, a lot of times, you know, camera and DP are like, they have to be strong inside that system, you know, to
Asking Tamara about maybe some of the reactions you've received over the journey of the film through the festival circuit, and or even through colleagues and family members.
The biggest surprise has been how many people relate to the film. And of course, our job as storytellers is to take the most specific of experience and make it relatable to our wider audience. But this one is so specific and almost an unforbidden conversation when we're speaking about addiction, mental health, and the ridiculous hierarchy there is with drugs and drug users, that there should be one that is worse than another, or an addict who uses this is different than, and we chose a drug that is probably the most stigmatized. We chose a screenwriter who is and he is open about being a former crack cocaine user. He also, in his work and his writing, wants to bring it to the forefront so that people aren't just having this picture of a crack user in an alley. The stories he has is, this is every person. This is, it's not as far away from you as you think. And I think in his writing, it's a very uncomfortable watch, because you realize none of us are that far away from one decision, from a night where you actually need support. And if all your supports are not available to you, what do you turn to? And so it's just such an extreme story that yeah, that's what it was most surprising, how many people had their own story. And I think that's credit to the storytellers and how they portrayed with such humanity those characters. I will say, though, that we just came back from Blue Mountain Film Festival, which is a very different kind. We're in the country. It's not like industry, we're not doing, red carpets or anything like that. It is very relaxed. It's very naturey. There's a lot of retirees. It's a different crowd. The laughter, I have to tell you this, Michael, because I forgot to update you. It was crazy that you're in the beauty of the mountains and it's so hardcore watching a film like that. And that's what continues to amaze me, and that it opens people up enough that at the end, when we're talking, that they feel safe enough to share with us their personal stories of family members or themselves that have experienced addiction in this way.
Anything you want to add, Jamie and Michael, after?
Well, just to jump in, I mean, I think I mentioned this to you the first time we spoke, but I've heard it so many times since that it's worth repeating. People are amazed that they still feel compassion towards these two men who have shown themselves in in the darkest of ways. Um, they're privileged. They have a toxic value systems that are turned inward, um, and yet they're human, and we still love them. And that is quite an extraordinary thing to pull off. And I think it really does come down to what we were touching on earlier with Michael, this openness, this lens of non-judgment, and capacity to draw together in our commonality and create a space where those kinds of realities aren't excluded. I mean, Michael talked to me early on about this notion of vertical ascendance versus horizontal ascendance. And this is, I haven't had a chance to share this with you, Michael, but this has actually been a sort of a theme throughout the journey of this film, of sharing this film, and it's perhaps some way in which we can articulate how not to internalize the industry and what this thing can do to us, but actually to stay in that space of vulnerability and to walk in a good way, and to know what's really important. And being able to ascend vertically is nothing unless you're able to integrate it. And that, to me, that teaching, I think, is really clear in the film, but it wasn't necessarily in the script, and it wasn't necessarily in my consciousness when I was making it, but it was certainly in yours, because that's obviously a way in which you understand your role in the world. And to tell the story of these two privileged middle-aged white guys through having 3 Indigenous women as producers and you as an Indigenous man, I think has created this space of humanity, which I'm tremendously proud of.
That's so great. Michael, did you want to chime in?
Yeah. Well, thank you, of course. And I think it's a really key idea that Jamie just brought up is that, you know, the way we relate to each other as artists is of primary importance. Because in that space, power is not really part of the equation. You know, like it's part of the story, but it's not how we work. It's not how we work. So, as an Indigenous actor, I've been working this industry over 30 years, and there's something new that's happening because of people like Tamara, because of her sister Jennifer, because of other people like Ava. So from inside, it's how we relate to each other, and it's not about power. But there is something happening because of Tamara and Jennifer and Eva and other people like this, is that as an Indigenous community, we are accessing the decision-making layer inside production. And that is everything. It's everything. Because we have control of the stories. Yes, we've written the stories. Yes, we've used our bodies to express the stories. But now, because of the producerial layer, we can dictate to whom the stories are being addressed. It's to us. It's for us. And by being specific, we become universal. Then then people are like, oh, I heard you. I heard that story. And yes, it may not have been specifically Indigenous, but the way, how it's structured, how it's told speaks to me. And that's us. That's our imprint. And I think that's what is game changing about this, I think.
I'm kind of quiet because there's so much depth to everything that each of you has said in the last few minutes, and I think it didn't become clear until just when we were starting to record this interview, because like I was saying, there's a sense of community in watching the film. There is also a sense of connection, but again, we are sort of minutes away from being that person falling into the abyss of darkness, whatever it is, mental health or substance use or any crisis, right? So it's interesting to kind of put it all together again. I'm going to say that again. I'm wondering, in terms of taking it back to maybe filming, if there were any sort of scenes or parts of the story that sort of were either pivotal to each of you for different ways, or something that has stayed with you that you're gonna carry moving forward in the next work that you do. Whoever wants to go first, maybe Michael, in case we run out.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to Jamie, to Jamie's performance. This film is built around him. This film is built on his back, and I've been fortunate. I've been a lead, in a project, and there's you'd think there's a lot of glory, but there ain't no glory when you're that guy, when you're number one. Everything sits on your back, right? And what Jamie did, I'm inspired by it to this day. He transformed his body. He transformed himself into Daniel. And so when it came time to direct him, I was like, I wasn't like turning a dial. I was like moving it like an increment, and then going, oh yeah, okay. All right. And then another dial or a slider, just like the lightest touch, because he had embodied it completely. And, Rick, of course, is a fantastic actor and was able to just bounce off of that. So I learned something as a director. It's like, oh, you build it around something central, something like a root or a tree, and everything else can work if you have a Jamie, in your team. So that's what I learned.
Great. Who wants to go next?
Um, I think, and I don't think this is oversharing of like really deep inside the process. But there was something I learned. I really tried to stay out of the way. I trusted Michael so much. I trusted the actors so much. But then we got to our fourth day. It was only a 4-day shoot. We were at the climax of the film. And this is the only time. The other thing I pride myself on is nobody knew we were married on set, other than our friends, but of the people, the new crew members that we brought on. And that I was like, this is good. This is good that you're not bringing any of that thing, that any of that stuff in. But then there was a moment that I could see that Jamie was struggling with him. He was just up against himself, and I I knew, and it was a hard moment because it was the first time that I came to Michael and I said, Michael, just ask him to look at the screen. Just ask him to watch playback. And this is I never wanted to interfere like that, but I could see and I know him so well because we live together and we have gone through life together. And if he could watch for a moment and distance himself for a second, because being in that character all day for everything leading up to that, it becomes harder and harder to pull away. And Michael was gracious enough, and he was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And then we went a little bit more, and then I just said, please let him just watch. And even Jane, we talked about this so much because it is a thing that we don't use. I certainly am not a playback watcher. Jamie had never been a playback watcher. So playback is when you go to the screen and you watch what was just seen. That was a huge lesson for me. That you can have your code, have your code of conduct and your approach and stick to it, but every once in a while, under that pressure and that amount of energy that is buzzing through somebody's or through your body, that happened to work. Um, yeah, those are really hard moments where you just want to, he's my love, and I wanted him to be okay, and I wanted him to just have some space around it.
That's fair. I know Jamie shared, interestingly, that same bit in our first
Did he?
interview,
Oh, good. Okay.
which is great. I love getting the full picture. It's amazing.
For
Sorry,
sweet
Jamie,
moments.
you can share something or
No, that's funny. I don't remember sharing that the last time we spoke, but I guess yeah. I mean, that was obviously a very pivotal moment in the creative process. It was a moment where Daniel's at the table and he's really having a sort of psychological meltdown. And not to spoil the film at all, but I think, what I've always known about being a creative person, about being an actor, about being a person in general, is that to some extent, sometimes you can be your own worst enemy. Purely the basis of how you're able to um, uh, support yourself in difficult circumstances. And the thing is, this slightly masochistic thing of being an actor, that you put yourself willingly in very difficult emotional, psychological spaces. So it's only natural that that kind of self-saboteur type stuff might appear. And so when it did in that moment, it was my better self ultimately that knew ahead of time that I need to be supported in case those moments happen. And that's when the team, Michael and Tamara, really, it was really very clear why that was right. Because it's something, there are many different ways of accessing a character or storytelling. And I think ultimately all you get as you get older is you have more tools in your toolbox. But that spark of vulnerability that you have at the beginning is really the thing that is all you ever really have. But if you have tools in the toolbox, you can handle those blocks when you can't feel it. And looking at playback is one of those things. If you're stuck in your head and you can't see what the feedback is coming, sometimes you just need to look at it and go, oh Jesus,
You're
just
like, "Oh,
down a bit. You're just like, oh, just stop acting so much, or something really simple like the penny
I
drop.
didn't say that."
You didn't need to, really. But Michael, I mean, there's so many tools that guy has. He has like where Mary Poppins has a bag and she opens it and it's just endless. You know, I think one of the things that I loved working with Michael was that because I'd co-written the story and it was very close to home, and they were working with Rob and Tamara and how the whole thing, there was some part of me that it wasn't in my being quite yet. I'd physically worked very hard to get him into a really physical condition. But Michael's sensitivity and, you know, sort of Bruce Lee-like quality in his physicality just really helped ground it all for me. And I suppose one of the things that I take away from it, which has been a continual sort of process, is just the creative force is sort of limitless, and you can tap into it in so many different ways. And when you get to work with artists who have many different ways, I mean, you know, Tamara is a singer, choreographer, dancer, writer. Same, Michael, you know, he's a scholar. I mean, you can sit down and talk to you about history, you know, and that just, when you have that kind of love and dedication, and that's what you put at the heart of your production, you really can sort of do anything, you know. And I mean, even the learning curve of getting some rejections, because we made a very long short film. It's not really a short film. We've heard from a lot of programmers that they love it, but it's hard to place, you know. But even, you know, how the team responded to those kinds of rejections, and that, you know, it really is. It's not about what you're doing. It's about how you're doing it. And I don't think I will ever work in the same way ever again.
It's interesting as I hear you all talk, because you all wear different hats depending on the day, right? In terms of, you know, some days you're prepping as an actor, or you have, you know, your producers, or, you know, sometimes singing and dancing. And I'm wondering if, you know, because of the depth of experience that each of you brings, it kind of created not just the safe space we're talking about, but also, I guess what I'm getting at is, how do you see this moving forward? You have this one film now, and what are you hoping to do in terms of the next work that you do, whether it is together in community, or bringing it to an idea that might be different from film?
I'm having the challenge right now of the grant application, the financing applications are I find them so restrictive. And what we experienced on this film was private funding. And when you have private funding, you don't have to talk about the theme over and over again. You don't have to talk about the audience that you're marketing towards, or the demographic that this is made for. Those conversations are, and I know, Michael, you were just finishing a grant a couple of weeks ago, to explain your art, and this might be the only time that I look to ChatGPT to help make something that is not to be put sometimes in those little boxes that you have. So my challenge now is to retain the freedom and the clarity of vision when I have to adapt it to a funding body. And there was a moment where we lost a little, we needed a little bit more money, and so I was going to apply for a little finishing fund, or, you know, just some more money on the back end. And even starting writing, and for me to reduce the impact or provocation of or provocativeness of the drug use, of the hypersexual connotations that there are, the like, I didn't want to do it. It hurt me. It hurt me to have to make it appear any more like it to put it into a nice package to make it more accessible to somebody. So that's my journey now. Obviously, if I can continue to find private money to make the art, that's what I'm really hoping for. But what I, you know, we do have some plans for this film that we hope to develop into a larger story. What I've learned is working with friends is amazing. It's not, it's, you know, when you, and even for the new crew that we hired on, when everyone at the end, when you're saying goodbye, says, tell me when your next thing is. And you know that when people say it reminded them of film school, that we just got to play, those are the things that I would like to retain for the next time.
Great. Jamie, I'll go to you and then wrap up with Michael.
Was there a question? I forget. Was there...
Where do you go from here? What's the next thing?
Oh.
What do you bring to the next project?
I mean, I think, you know, faith, ultimately, you know, this no strings attached money kind of came out of it. And because I think for 25 years, we had basically been really curious about what our stories would be and amassing, how would we create a set, you know, and just thinking all those things, that as soon as we had the opportunity, we would just ran with it, you know. So I mean, really nice lesson is just, you never know what's around the corner. And I think it's a tremendously important thing to remember. You know, acting's hard, and surviving this for 30 years, 25 years, like, there are ups and downs, but there is nothing like owning something and creating it and making it. And I mean, I feel like I've always done that, whether acting has always sort of been the biggest way, but when I've not been able to do it, I always find other ways. And I guess this experience has taught me to really believe in the value of those things, because you never know when someone might show up and go, here's 100 grand, go off and make a film. And then you will have needed all of those times that you wrote things that you didn't know anybody was ever going to read, or, you know, and it's probably the first lesson I ever learned, you know, of you never know what can come of an audition. And yet it's also the lesson that I need to remember the most continually, again and again and again. You know, you don't know what's coming. And so just make the best of what you've got, you know?
Right. And Michael, I'm getting my time's up, but
No, that's okay.
thank you for being here. What are you taking with you next, or something that maybe you're expanding on?
Well, I'd love to expand on this story. I think this story was like, you know, the term "shot across the bow." You know, like this announces Blackbird. This announces Tamara and Jamie as a force. I think this story deserves a bigger platform, stage, you know, canvas. But the other thing that I'm taking away is, when you have an idea, you have to be true to the idea. And yes, short films are 15 minutes long, 13 minutes long, but that's an easy box to, like, for everyone to understand. And for Tamara and Jamie and the others go, yeah, but our film doesn't fit in the box. It deserves to be this. It deserves to be this, because that's the story we want to tell. And then go, oh, fuck it. It's going to be 30 minutes long. And go, that's artistry, because that means it's like, I have this idea, and I have experience, and I have aesthetic, and I have taste, and to be any less is a disservice to this work and to the artist that we made it with. And so I'm walking away with that going, yeah, fuck you and your boxes. I want to tell this story.
Excellent. I think that's a great way to wrap up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for being here. Always a pleasure to learn more and you know, support the work that you do. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Congratulations
Thank
to
you.
the festival circuit as well. I'll be sure
Thank
to
you so much.
put all the details. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Till
Thanks,
next time.
Heidi.